I immediately say, let's switch it around to tell you what happened last night. And not only that, we're also finding that many people just having to do with Trump support have gone through hell. And they've used the IRS for purposes of something that's very illegal for them to have to do. It's a very illegal, it's a very, very illegal thing to do what they did. And I think it's such a shame. That was long what?
That was wrong. Why are you considering changing that status quo?
Because I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace. They're obviously anti-Semitic, and all of a sudden they're starting to behave.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Perseverance Mindset Podcast. I am your host, John Zadzura. We're coming to you live from our famous Dialogue Den here in our studio. We are sporting our brand new cup today. Again, cups will be on sale soon. We are getting requests for them, so I will keep everyone updated. So, again, live from our Dialogue Den here today. And as always, a huge welcome to you, our unstoppable perseverance pioneers. Now, in today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, but now it is in the national spotlight. Why is the U.S. government still giving taxpayer funds to Ivy League universities that already have billions upon billions upon billions in endowments? Are these university Ivy League schools, or are these hedge funds with universities attached? We're going to take a look and a dive right into that question today. So what started with good intentions has turned into a system that no longer really doesn't make any sense to anybody. So let's dig into the history, the funding trail, and the question of that every taxpayer should be asking. So let's rewind just a little bit. After World War II, America saw higher education as a pathway to national strength. The GI Bill sent millions of veterans to college. Such a great thing, such a great opportunity. And in 1965, Higher Education Act was passed to expand access to education and pour funding into academic institutions. Then came the great big pivot in the 1970s. Medical research, which is still very prevalent and very needed today. I want to stress that. The federal government began investing heavily in universities, especially elite ones, for cancer research, public health breakthroughs. And again, the National Cancer Act of 1971, passed by President Nixon, supercharged this funding research. Much of it flowing into schools like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, the big 4 or 5. The goal was to defeat cancer, advance medicine, save lives, all great and noble asks. I don't think anybody in any of our perseverance pioneers would disagree with that. Billions were spent, and those investments yielded real progress, life-saving treatments, early detection technology, and new drugs, of course, new pharmaceuticals. There's not a pharmaceutical company out there that isn't against new pharmaceuticals and all of what that brings along with it, in addition to doing good, but there's a lot more than that. So the government support for medical research helped position America as the leader for global health innovation for decades. That mission, it made sense. So now, let's get a modern reality check of what we have at the current moment. Fast forwarding, today, Ivy League universities, fact, sit on enormous endowments. Harvard's endowment alone, $50 billion. Yale's, nearly $45 billion. And yet, still, these same institutions continue receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer funding every year, funded by you and me for them, the same university that have endowments of $45 billion. This funding goes to research, financial aid, infrastructure, and more. Again, very noble causes. But here's what's changed. These schools are now investing like corporations. Education Inc., which is another episode we'll have coming up, Education Incorporated. Some even have hedge fund arms. It was said on a news station this morning that when we look at these elite universities, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, UC Berkeley, we look at these universities, and are they elite institutions of higher learning, or are they ginormous, gigantic hedge funds with universities attached for the tax benefits? Fact, look it up. They pay minimal taxes, minimal, and in many cases, their investment returns outpace tuition revenue. Again, business or university, you be the judge of that, our perseverance pioneers. Let's be real. These schools could fund cancer research and then some without taking another penny of taxpayer or government provided funding. Why are we still paying? Asking the question now more than ever. Why are we still paying? Good question to ask. Contact your congressman. Contact your local state representative. Let's start asking that question. So now, there's been a big discussion of this breaking into a free speech issue. This is not a free speech issue. This is a funding issue. Now, here's what we have to be crystal clear. This is not a free speech argument. Free speech is a core American value ingrained in the Constitution, ingrained in all of our founding documents, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Even though some don't like to hear that, it's made for when it's an uncomfortable conversation, constitutionally protected. But when elite universities, institutions allow anti-Semitic chants, faculty who enable the protesting chaos, and I'm not talking about peacefully protesting, I'm talking about overtaking the school, overtaking the facility, barring police from having on campus to engage with these protests, and students who storm buildings, all while receiving federal funding, this becomes a question of taxpayer accountability. Having students at these universities blocked from attending the courses that they pay for. Having those same universities say that they can't keep students on campus safe. They can't guarantee their safety. It's just appalling. And again, it's a graceful misconduct of civil rights as well. I'm not an attorney, but I know that these universities have to abide by standards. The standards that if any federal funds are received, they must not only protect, but also engage in facilitating that those standards are upheld. Again, and this becomes a question of accountability. We're not talking about censorship. Whether you're talking about money, your money, our money, should be used to support these institutions, whole nother conversation. That no longer, the question is, do these institutions no longer reflect our national values of safety, respect, and just basic order? When these universities and campuses were being overtaken and had to have police come in and take back the university from students that were basically on video being trained of how to resist and be physical with police officers, you have to start asking these questions. And here's something a lot of folks forget. This kind of accountability behind federal dollars isn't new. So here is some of the history on presidents that said not another penny or no more. Throughout history, presidents, Republican, Democrat, have pulled funding when institutions crossed the line. Ronald Reagan stripped funding from universities that banned military recruiters. Bill Clinton signed laws cutting off support to nonprofits that didn't meet federal requirements. George W. Bush Jr. defunded international groups promoting abortion overseas. And more than recently, President Trump threatened cut funding to campuses that failed to protect free speech, basic safety, and basic civil rights. So let's not pretend that this is unprecedented. It's not censorship. It's consequence. And it's not about left or right. It's about values and accountability. This conversation is being shifted into the national spotlight, and people need to be asking these questions. Now, here are a few common sense ideas that are being discussed. We need to require wealthy universities to use their own endowments before even considering receiving funds or before touching taxpayer funds. Let's attach some accountability requirements to these federal dollars. Schools that want government dollars should meet clear standards on campus conduct, non-discrimination, and just basic safety of the students. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. Do you? Redirect funding to community colleges, HSBCUs, and trade schools that keep America running. Trade schools, what a great idea. Redirect that funding, all those billions of dollars, put it to get people that could spend a few $1,000s on a tuition, on a trade school, on plumbing, welding, carpentry, just construction, and go right to work, create a small business. What a great idea. Now, redirecting that funding could be a big difference. This isn't about punishing success, it's about rewarding impact and the positive impact that this could have on society and the country, and more or less the world. Now, let's zoom out a little bit. Cancer research. That made sense. It still does. Saves lives, but today's Ivy League ecosystem looks more like a fortress of education incorporated. It looks like a fortress of just being an upper class echelon person of a society above that person that's the plumber, the welder, the technician. And those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Are we going to continue to fund these type of universities with these core set of values? Or are we going to look onto the future and say, all these billions that these endowments could be paying, admitting their own students, paying their own faculty, paying for their own overhead in running a college, having a building, not paying taxes, because some of them pay very little to no taxes, because again, tax exempt status, that's something that's being put into the national spotlight. If these universities truly believe in their mission, they should be leading with their own resources, not asking working class Americans like you, like me, all of our perseverance pioneers out there, to subsidize their silence, their inaction, and their scandals. This is what needs to be brought to the national spotlight. Again, to all my perseverance pioneers, this is bigger than Ivy League funding. This is a topic that's being brought into the national spotlight, and I'm personally glad it is. This is about what kind of future we're building for you, me, our children, children's children, and decades from now. Do we continue pouring money into institutions that are already bloated with wealth while crying poor, while crying their one missed tuition away from closure? Or do we finally want to start investing in people and places, HSBCU, trade schools, redirecting those funds to places that can actually need it, where it matters most? You tell me, perseverance pioneers. So if you like our content today, drop a comment, send a message. Do you think it's time we think how we fund higher education? What is essential higher education? So until next time, stay sharp, stay strong, keep on persevering, all of our pioneers. And this is the Perseverance Mindset Podcast, live from our dialogue den. I'll catch you on the next episode.